Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something your body does, about 20,000 times a day, without you even thinking about it, breathing.
Right.
And it seems so simple, air in, air out. But when you dig into your sources, you realize it's this massive physiological balancing act.
It really is. And that's the whole challenge here. The sources push us to think beyond just, say, a single air sac or one molecule.
To see the whole system.
Exactly. It's a concept called systems biology. The idea is that the real magic, the truth of how we live, isn't just in the parts. It's an emergent property.
What do you mean by emergent?
It means it arises from the interaction of all the pieces working together. You have the physics of moving air, the chemistry of gas exchange, the neurology controlling the rhythm. None of it works alone. Respiration is the perfect example.
It's also wild when you look at how many different ways life has solved this problem.
Oh, totally, depending on the environment. Simple diffusion for sponges, a moist skin for earthworms.
Insects have those little tubes, right?
Tracheal tubes, yeah. And then you get gills for fish, and finally for us, lungs. It just shows you there's no single best way, just what's optimized for this situation.
Okay, so let's trace our own optimized solution, the human air highway. Where does the journey start?
It all begins at the external nostrils, then moves into the nasal chamber. After that, it hits a really critical intersection.
The pharynx.
The pharynx, which is the common passage for both food and air. From there, the air alone is supposed to go into the larynx, the voice box, and then down the trachea or windpipe.
And there's that amazing little safety feature right there to stop us from choking.
The epiglottis, it's this brilliant little cartilaginous flap.
A trapdoor, basically.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. When you swallow, it slams shut over the glottis, the opening to the larynx, and makes sure your food goes down the esophagus, not into your lungs.
And the trachea itself is reinforced, isn't it?
It is. With these incomplete rings of cartilage, it's a smart design. It keeps the airway propped open no matter what.
So once we're past those main tubes, the system splits its work into two very different jobs.
It does. First up is what we call the conducting part.
Okay.
That's everything from your nostrils down to the terminal bronchioles. Its job is just logistics. Transporting air, but also cleaning it, humidifying it, and bringing it to body temperature.
It's the air conditioning and filtering system.
That's it. And then you have the second part.
Where the real action happens.
The exchange part. This is basically the alveoli, these tiny, super thin-walled, baggy structures, and their ducts. This is the actual site where gas diffuses between your blood and the air you just breathed in.
And the lungs themselves are housed inside the thoracic chamber. I think this is a point people miss. The lungs themselves are totally passive.
They are completely passive. They sit in this airtight chamber formed by your spine, your ribs, your sternum, and the diaphragm muscle at the bottom. We can't just inflate our lungs like a balloon.
We have to change the size of the box they're in.
You have to change the volume of the chamber. And because it's airtight, when the chamber expands, the lungs are pulled open with it.
And the whole thing is wrapped in a protective layer, the pleura.
Yes, a double-layered membrane with pleural fluid in between. It's like a lubricant. It stops any friction while the lungs are constantly moving.
So we've built the machine. Let's talk about the physics that run it. The sources break down respiration into 5 steps.
Right. The whole cycle is 1, breathing itself, pulmonary ventilation. 2, diffusion at the alveoli. 3, transport in the blood.
Then diffusion again.
Diffusion again, but this time at the tissues. And finally, step 5 is the cells actually using the oxygen to make energy.
So let's stick with step 1, just moving the air. It's all about pressure gradients, right?
It's nothing but pressure gradients.
Mm-hmm.
Air moves from high pressure to low. That's it. So, inspiration breathing in is an active process.
Meaning you need muscles to do it.
Exactly. It only happens when the pressure inside your lungs is lower than the atmospheric pressure outside. You have to create a kind of vacuum.
And how do we do that?
2 main muscle groups. First, the diaphragm, that big dome at the bottom, contracts and flattens down. That makes the chest cavity longer.
Okay.
Second, your external intercostal muscles, the ones between your ribs, contract. They lift the ribs up and out.
Which makes the chest cavity wider.
Right. Both actions increase the volume of the thoracic cage, which pulls the lungs open, drops the pressure inside, and air just rushes in.
And breathing out is the opposite.
Oh.
And it's usually passive.
Most of the time, yes. Expiration is just those muscles relaxing. The diaphragm domes back up, the ribs fall back down. The whole thing just sort of springs back into place.
Compressing the air?
Which raises the pressure inside the lungs to be higher than the atmosphere, and that forces the air out. Simple as that. Unless you need to force it, like in a cough,
Hmm.
then use other muscles.
And this whole engine just runs constantly. What is it, about 12 to 16 breaths a minute for a healthy adult?
12 to 16, yeah.
Huh.
And we can measure all this with a spirometer, which brings us to how we quantify all this air we're moving.
And the volumes and capacities.
Exactly. These are the numbers that tell doctors how well your lungs are really working.
So let's start with the most basic one. A normal, relaxed breath. What's that called?
That's your tidal volume, or TV, and it's surprisingly small, only about 500 milliliters.
Half a liter. That doesn't seem like much.
It's not, but do the math. 500 milliliter times, say, 14 breaths a minute. You're moving 7,000 milliliters. 7 liters of air every minute just sitting there.
Wow. Okay, so what if I take the biggest breath I possibly can? That extra air on top of the 500 mil away.
That's your inspiratory reserve volume, or IRV. And that is a huge reserve. It can be 2,500 to 3,000 milliliter.
And the other way.
Yeah.
The extra I can push out after a normal exhale.
That's the expiratory reserve volume, ERV, around 1,000 to 1,100 ml. But, and this is important, your lungs are never actually empty.
There's always some air left.
Always. That's the residual volume, or RV. About 1,100 to 1,200 milliliter that stays in there, even after you've forced every last bit of air out that you can.
And that's to keep them from collapsing, right?
Exactly. It keeps the little air sacs from sticking together. And when you start adding these volumes up, you get clinically useful numbers, like vital capacity.
Which is everything you can possibly move.
It's everything you can move, your ERV plus your tidal volume plus your IRV, the total functional volume you have to work with.
And if you add the residual volume to that, you get the total lung
You
capacity.
get the TLC. And those numbers tell a story about lung health.
Okay, so air is in. Now for the main event, the exchange. This is all driven by simple diffusion.
Yep. Just simple diffusion, all based on what we call partial pressure gradients.
So the individual pressure of each gas.
Correct. Let's follow the oxygen, the O arrow. In the atmosphere, its partial pressure, PO arrow, is about 159 millimeters of mercury. By the time it gets deep into your alveoli, that drops to 104.
And why is 104 the magic number?
Because the deoxygenated blood that's just arrived at the lungs has a PO of only 40.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
It's a massive gradient, over 60 points. That pressure difference is like a waterfall. It just forces OREO to flood from the alveoli into the blood. Instantly.
And when that blood gets to the tissues?
The tissues are using up oxygen, so their PO is also low, around 40. The blood arrives with a PO of about 95, so again, big gradient, and the oxygen just dumps out of the blood and into the cells.
So now let's track the waste product, the CO euro. Its gradient seems way, way smaller.
It is, and this is the really elegant part of the system. So in the tissues, PCO is high, about 45. In the blood arriving, it's 40.
So only a 5-point gradient.
Just 5 points. But that's enough to push key oro into the blood. Then that blood gets to the lungs, where the alveolar PCO is 40. Again, just a 5-point gradient to push the KO out of the blood and into the air.
Wait, hold on. If the OREO radiant is over 60 and the CO is only 5, how does it move fast enough? How do we not just fill up with KO?
This is the chemical trick. Kioro is 20 to 25 times more soluble in the membrane than OO is.
Ah, so it doesn't need a big push.
It doesn't. Its high solubility completely makes up for the small pressure gradient. It allows it to move just as fast, if not faster.
And all of this happens across a membrane that's, what, less than a millimeter thick?
Unbelievably thin. It's just 3 layers. The wall of the alveolus, the wall of the capillary, and a tiny basement substance fused between them. That minimal distance is absolutely critical.
Okay, the oxygen is in the blood. Now it needs a ride. That's where hemoglobin comes in.
That's the dedicated cargo carrier. An incredible 97% of oro is bound to hemoglobin inside your red blood cells. It forms what we call oxyhemoglobin.
And only 3% is just dissolved in the plasma.
Any fraction, yeah.
The amazing thing about hemoglobin is that it's a smart molecule. It knows when to hold on to oxygen and when to let it go.
It does. We can see this on the oxygen dissociation curve. Basically, its affinity, its grip on oxygen, changes depending on the local environment.
So in the lungs, where there's tons of oxygen, it grabs on tight.
Grabs on very tight. But when it gets to your muscles during a workout, things are different. The local PCO is high, it's more acidic from H+ ions, it's warmer. All of those are signals.
Signals for what?
They're signals to let go. They effectively tell hemoglobin, this is a working tissue. Drop the oxygen here.
So the byproducts of work trigger the delivery.
Precisely. And it's very consistent. Under normal conditions, Every 100 milliliter of your oxygenated blood delivers a neat 5 milliliters of O-Euro to your tissues.
A perfect quota. Okay, now the Kyo Euro return trip. It's chemically a lot more complicated.
Much more. It actually uses 3 different methods. Only about 7% is dissolved in the plasma. Another 20–25% binds to hemoglobin, but the vast majority,
The other 70%.
about 70%, yeah, is converted into something else entirely. It's transported as bicarbonate ions, HCOs.
And for that to happen, you need a very special, very fast enzyme.
You do. Inside the red blood cells, you have huge amounts of an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase.
What does it do?
At the tissues where LEOS is high, it grabs CoOs and water and instantly converts them into carbonic acid, which then becomes bicarbonate. It's how the blood safely mops up all that CO waste.
And then it reverses the process in the lungs.
Exactly. When that blood hits the low PCO environment of the alveoli, the enzyme flips the reaction, turns the bicarbonate back into CeLO, which then just diffuses out into your lungs to be exhaled.
It's a buffer and a transport system all in one.
It is. And again, the numbers are tight. 100 milliliters of deoxygenated blood delivers about 4 milliliters of CO to the alveoli. Input and output are perfectly matched.
This whole incredibly complex system just runs in the background. So where's the control panel? What's regulating the rhythm?
The main control panel is in the brainstem, specifically a place called the respiratory rhythm center in the medulla.
The medulla is the main engine.
It's the primary driver, but there's also a fine-tuner in the pons called the pneumotaxic center. It can send signals to the medulla to, for example, shorten an inspiration, which in turn speeds up your overall breathing rate.
Okay, this brings us to what I thought was the most fascinating part of the sources, the regulatory twist. When you're exercising hard and you start panting, what is your brain actually responding to? You'd assume it's a lack of oxygen.
That is the logical assumption, isn't it? You're working hard, you need more oxygen. But that's not what the sources say.
That's the opposite.
It's pretty much the opposite. Your body is overwhelmingly sensitive to the buildup of waste, specifically rising levels of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions, which means rising acidity.
So it's not screaming for O-Euro, it's screaming to get rid of C-Euro.
Yes. There's a chemosensitive area right next to the rhythm center that detects this rise in CO and acid. That's the trigger. That's what tells the center to ramp up your breathing rate and depth to blow off that excess CO and neutralize the acid.
So your body prioritizes getting rid of waste over getting more fuel.
It absolutely does. The sources are really clear on this. They say the role of oxygen in regulating the rhythm is, and I'm quoting here, quite insignificant.
That's incredible. It reframes the whole thing. Breathing is an anti-acid system first, and an oxygen delivery system second.
It shows you how critical maintaining that internal chemical balance homeostasis really is. A change in pH is a much more immediate danger to your cells than a slight dip in oxygen.
And of course, when this whole delicate system breaks down, we see some serious problems.
We do. We see respiratory disorders.
Like asthma, that difficulty breathing and wheezing from inflammation in the airways.
Right. And then you have more chronic destructive diseases like emphysema. That's where the actual walls of the alveoli get damaged and break down, which permanently reduces the surface area you have for gas exchange.
And the sources point a finger directly at one major cause.
They do. Cigarette smoking.
And finally, there are the occupational disorders, from things like mining or stone breaking.
Yeah. Long-term exposure to high levels of dust, the body's defense mechanisms, the filtering in that conducting part just get overwhelmed. It leads to inflammation and then fibrosis.
What's fibrosis?
It's basically scarring. The lungs start building up fibrous tissue, which makes them stiff and unable to function properly. It's why protective masks in those industries are absolutely non-negotiable.
It's just a stunningly complex system. This whole deep dive shows that breathing is so much more than a reflex.
It's a perfect symphony of physics, chemistry, and neural control, a true emergent system.
And it just works. Billions of times in a lifetime.
Flawlessly for most of us.
Which brings us back to that regulatory twist and a final thought for you to take away. If your body's main trigger for taking a breath isn't the need for more oxygen, but the urgent need to get rid of Kyoto and acid, what does that tell you about your body's deepest, most fundamental priority? It's not just about getting the good stuff in. It's about relentlessly, desperately keeping the internal chemical environment stable.